Hey guys, tonight we slip into something a little different: time travel. No machines, no flux capacitors, no glowing blue phone booths. Just you, lying back, maybe with your blanket tucked under your chin, and me whispering you across hundreds of millions of years. You're about to stand on a planet you'd hardly recognize. The air feels different. The horizon looks wrong. And if you tried to actually live here, well, you probably wouldn't survive this little stroll. But don't worry, I'll keep you safe. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now for you. I always love seeing our little community stretched across the globe and all through the night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The world around you begins to shimmer, fading from familiar shades of city, streetlights and glowing phone, screens to a sky lit differently lower, redder, almost like sunset stretched across the entire day. You're standing on a rocky slope overlooking a vast plain, and before you stretches something that doesn't quite make sense. Not a country, not even a continent. It's everything. One colossal piece of earth pulled together, stitched into one. This is Pangea. You take a slow step forward. Beneath your feet, the ground is ancient sandstone, still warm from a sun that seems a little too close for comfort. The air feels heavy, like breathing after a jog, as though the planet hasn't quite figured out the mix of oxygen and carbon dioxide it wants to stick with. Geologists say Pangea came together around 335 million years ago, when smaller continents, Laurasia, up north, and Gondwana, down south, slammed together in the slowest car crash imaginable. You can't see it happen, of course, but you can feel it. The crunch of ancient mountain ranges rising, the folding of crust upon crust, as if the earth itself is stretching out a new backbone. From your vantage point, you notice the land goes on forever. No neat borders, no oceans breaking things up. Just one sprawling body bigger than anything you've ever pictured. If you started walking from one side to the other, you'd cover over 19,000 kilometers. That's longer than any flight you've ever dreaded sitting through. And certainly no peanuts or Wi-Fi to help pass the time. Still, as you stand there, you sense how strange it must have been to live during this era, if living is the right word. Historians still argue whether the animals here would have seen Pangea as one whole landmass or simply their little corner of it. Imagine being a creature that doesn't know maps exist. Your whole world is just the valley, the swamp, the desert around you. You don't step back and say, "Oh, this is Pangea." You just crawl, climb, and hope you don't get eaten. You crouch low, brushing your hand across the soil. It's dry in some places, rich in others. This fusion of continents created all sorts of environments. Coastal wetlands to your left, scorching deserts to your right. It's like someone spun the globe's climate wheel and forgot to hit shuffle. You feel a trickle of sweat bead on your neck, reminding you that while Earth looked united, it wasn't exactly balanced. The inland areas of Pangea were so far from the oceans that they baked under dry skies, while the coastal zones were drowning in humidity. Looking closer, you notice something that feels almost familiar: mountains. Jagged, towering, freshly built by collisions of plates that used to be separate. These ranges are the ancestors of the Appalachians, the Urals, and more. In your time, they've eroded, softened, covered in greenery. But here, they're raw and sharp, like Earth just pulled them out of the oven. As you wander along a ridge, you notice the silence. No birds because birds haven't yet evolved. Instead, there's the distant croak of giant amphibians and the skitter of reptiles in the underbrush. Funny, isn't it? You're standing at a time before the mighty dinosaurs dominated, yet the stage is already being set. Somewhere not too far from you, small lizard-like creatures are eyeing the world with hungry curiosity, not knowing their descendants will one day rule it. You pause, breathing in deeply again. The air smells strange, almost metallic, carrying hints of volcanic ash. Scientists believe volcanism was a constant during this time. Magma churning under the seams where continents fused. You can almost taste it in the wind. There's a subtle vibration underfoot too, as if the earth is sighing after forcing all its bones into one rigid shape. And you think, no wonder it'll eventually crack apart again. The light fades into a long, smoldering twilight. You notice the stars appear sharper, maybe because the air lacks the pollution you're used to. Funny thought, you're here in the past, but you might actually be breathing cleaner air than you ever have at home. Unless, of course, you count the occasional whiff of swamp gas, which I don't recommend bottling for later. As you sit down on a smooth rock, legs stretched out, you imagine what it must have felt like to be one of the first creatures, crawling across this giant unified land. No compass, no GPS, no concept of borders, just an endless stretch of earth. Some scholars suggest that this kind of landmass helped species spread faster, since there were fewer barriers. Others argue that the sheer size actually isolated creatures, with deserts forming walls just as effective as oceans. There's no single answer, and that mystery hums in the silence as you look around. The night deepens. A cool breeze picks up, carrying with it the sounds of ancient water lapping somewhere far off. You realize you're at the very beginning of this journey, perched at the dawn of Pangea's reign. And there's so much left to see. Soon you'll explore its endless coastlines, its deserts, its forests, and the strange creatures that shuffle, swim, and soar across it. But for now, you just lean back, gazing at the alien sky, letting the realization sink in. You're standing on the Earth, but it feels like another planet entirely. You wake to the soft roar of waves, though when you look out across the horizon, you realize the water isn't just a little bay or the edge of a familiar coastline. It's something much larger. Pangea's shorelines sprawl on, so immense that standing here, you feel like you're at the edge of forever. The ocean before you is called Pangea, the universal sea, and it stretches over most of Earth's surface. That's right, nearly 70% of the globe is still ocean, just as in your time, but here, the water gathers into one unimaginably vast body, encircling Pangea like a giant sapphire belt. You shuffle closer, toes digging into damp sand that's darker and grainier than what you might find on a modern beach. The tide is enormous. It creeps in with slow, deliberate power, flooding half a kilometer inland before reluctantly pulling back. Standing here, you realize why scholars often describe Pangea as both cradle and monster. It gave life to so many creatures, yet its moods could swallow whole coastlines. Historians still argue whether tides here were higher or lower than modern ones. But one thing's certain, without any continents in the way, storms had the freedom to build up into titanic walls of water. The sound is strangely calming, though. The rhythmic crash, the hiss of foam, the cry of creatures you can't quite see. And yet, if you glance down at your own reflection in the shallow pools, something feels eerie. You're staring at the same kind of shore countless creatures would have used to crawl from sea to land millions of years before. You're not just watching history. You're standing in its footprints, shuffling a few steps along the sand. You notice shells unlike any you've ever picked up on a family vacation. These are thick, coiled spirals, some the size of dinner plates. Ammonites. They're patterned. Shells gleam faintly in the fading light, and you imagine them drifting offshore with their tentacles waving like little flags. A quirky tidbit: people in the Middle Ages actually dug up these fossils and called them snake stones, believing they were serpents turned to rock. You grin at the thought. If you carried one of these back with you, some future villager might think you've uncovered cursed treasure. Farther along the beach, the sand turns rocky, and you clamber over slabs where the surf booms against stone. Spray dampens your clothes. The salt hangs thick in your nose. Suddenly, movement catches your eye. A reptile, low and lean, scuttles across the wet stones. Its claws scrape sharply, and it pauses to flick its tongue at the air. You're not in Jurassic Park yet, so no towering dinosaurs here, but these little reptiles are the warm-up acts, figuring out the basics of land survival. Some paleontologists believe these early shoreline hunters pioneered the strategies that later predators would refine: stalking, lunging, waiting. You sit for a moment, letting your hand drift into the foamy surf. The water feels slightly warmer than the ocean's. You're used to that because during Pangea's reign, global climates leaned hotter, and the vast, open Panthalassa circulated heat differently. Some models suggest strong ocean currents swept around the entire planet, stirring up nutrients in ways that may have fueled bursts of evolution. Others say the openness of Panthalassa actually limited diversity, creating deserts of water where few creatures thrived. Again, historians still argue over which picture is truer, but either way, you can feel the pulse of something ancient in the water leaning back. You watch seabirds soar overhead. Wait, not birds, not yet. Those shadowy figures are pterosaurs, early flyers skimming the shoreline for prey. They wheel gracefully, then dive, their long jaws snapping fish with a precision that makes you think of pelicans. Imagine the shock of seeing one of those flapping above your picnic blanket. At least they don't seem interested in you. You wave a hand half-jokingly, but they're too focused on dinner, walking farther. You find yourself beside a tide pool, its glassy surface hiding small wriggles. Tiny trilobite relatives scurry about, armored like miniature tanks. You lean closer. Fascinated, these little survivors have already seen mass extinctions come and go, and they'll hang on a while longer. There's something humbling about staring into a puddle of water and realizing it contains a lineage older than humanity by hundreds of millions of years. You stretch out on a sun-warmed rock, listening as the tide slaps rhythmically. Your eyelids droop for a moment, but you force them open. No time to nap. Not when you've got all of Pangea to explore. Still, you let your mind drift with the waves. You imagine being one of those ammonites, floating lazily in Panthalassa, oblivious to the drama of shifting continents. Or maybe you're a reptile scampering over tide-wet rocks, just trying not to get snatched by something bigger. The funny part? In their world, you're the odd one out, stumbling barefoot like you've misplaced your sandals. The wind changes, picking up a salty tang as the sun dips lower. Shadows stretch long across the sand, and you realize just how endless this coastline is. You could walk for days, weeks, months, and still be hugging the same shore. Pangea's edges measure over 60,000 kilometers longer than circling Earth twice in your time. Just imagine the road trip snacks you need. You exhale slowly, letting the immensity sink in. Here, standing at the edge of Pangea, the world feels both familiar and impossibly alien. The waves crash, the tide sighs, and you can't help but think, this is only one sliver of the story. Beyond the horizon lies desert forest, swamp, and the creatures that will shape the future. But tonight, as the moonlight glimmers across Panthalassa, you're content to sit with your feet in the sand, listening to the breath of the oldest sea. The waves fade into background music as you step away from Pangea's endless coastline, moving inland. With every pace, the salty tang of the sea grows faint, replaced by air that feels heavier. You take a deep breath, and it's like inhaling a thick blanket. Oxygen levels in this time are tricky, sometimes higher than today, sometimes dipping lower, depending on volcanic activity and plant life. Right now, though, it feels dense, almost syrupy. You cough once, adjusting, your lungs working harder than they're used to. The sky above seems brighter, the light refracting differently through that heavy air. The sun bakes down harder too. Temperatures in Pangea's interior could swing dramatically, scorching by day, freezing at night because the land was so far from moderating ocean breezes. You wipe your forehead. That sheen of sweat is a reminder Earth doesn't really care about your comfort. This place is made for something else, and you're just a visitor. You start to notice how the plants reflect this strange air. Ferns grow tall, their fronds broad and eager, soaking up carbon dioxide and pumping oxygen back out in massive quantities. It's like the planet has cranked photosynthesis up a notch. You brush your hand across a fern stalk thicker than your arm, realizing you're in a world where plants can stretch skyward, taller and tougher, thanks to that atmospheric cocktail. Somewhere nearby, a cicada like buzz rattles the silence. You glance around, spotting a dragonfly with wings the size of dinner plates. It zips past, a shimmering blur in the sunlight. And here's your quirky tidbit for the evening. These giant insects weren't just weird evolutionary experiments. They thrived because higher oxygen levels allowed their respiratory systems to support bulkier bodies. Imagine swatting one of those on your porch. Not a chance. You'd probably just hand over the house keys. As you walk deeper inland, the heat presses harder, and the air shimmers with mirages. You lick your lips, tasting dust and metal. This is Triassic air, and it carries a reminder that Earth is still a restless, changing beast. Volcanic eruptions belched carbon dioxide into the sky, trapping heat, while vegetation battled to balance the scales. Historians still argue whether the greenhouse effect was the main driver of these conditions or whether shifting ocean currents played the bigger role. Either way, you feel it pressing on your chest with every breath. At one point, you stumble over a crack in the ground. When you kneel to look, steam curls up from below. A volcanic vent. You wave your hand through it, wincing as the sulfur stings your nose. Not exactly the kind of aromatherapy spa you'd recommend. The Earth's crust here is stretched tight. From the strain of holding Pangea together, it's like sitting on top of a pressure cooker with a faulty lid. You know it's going to blow, just not when. You keep moving, swatting at buzzing insects that dive bomb your ears. Some are harmless. Others look suspiciously like they'd happily sample human skin. It makes you wonder, in a world before mammals, what did these bugs feast on? Probably amphibians, reptiles, and each other. For now, you just pull your collar higher and keep walking, pretending you're invisible. After a while, you crest a ridge, and the view knocks the breath out of you again, though that might just be the air. Below stretches a basin filled with mist, glowing faintly in the fading light. Pools of water dot the valley, steaming as if heated from beneath. The smell of minerals drifts up, like hot springs mixed with metallic rain. You climb down carefully, your boots crunching on brittle rock. At the edge of one pool, you crouch, dipping your fingers in, warm, almost too warm. You imagine amphibians slipping into this water, their slick bodies vanishing beneath the surface. The thought makes you shiver. Somewhere in the mist, something splashes, but you can't see what. Maybe it's just your imagination. Or maybe not. You remind yourself this isn't a theme park ride. These things aren't on display for your entertainment. You're trespassing in their world. As night creeps in, the air grows thicker still, cool yet smothering. You lie back on a rock, staring at the stars through the haze. The constellations look the same in some ways, yet twisted in others. After all, starlight hasn't changed, but the earth beneath you has shifted dramatically. Funny thought, you're breathing air that might have carried the last sighs of ancient forests or the first. Breaths of creatures soon to dominate. You close your eyes, listening to the chorus of buzzing, croaking, and distant rumbles. This atmosphere dense, unpredictable, sometimes generous, sometimes deadly shaped everything you'll meet in the nights ahead. Every insect, every reptile, every fur knows its quirks to this thick Triassic soup. And tonight, you're floating in it too, lungs working overtime, realizing just how fragile human comfort really is. The air grows hotter as you press deeper inland, and soon the landscape shifts. The lushness you left behind begins to fade, and the greenery shrivels into thorny shrubs clinging to survival. The ground underfoot crunches like broken pottery, and ahead stretches a vision that could swallow you whole, an endless desert, baked flat under Pangea's relentless sun. You squint against the glare. The sand here isn't golden. The way you might imagine a postcard desert, it's iron red, streaked with ochre and black, like someone spilled rust across the horizon. Your footprints sink softly, then vanish as the dry wind sweeps them away. And you realize quickly this isn't just any desert. It's the very heart of Pangea, with no oceans close enough to send in moist breezes. The supercontinent's interior became an oven, larger than anything you know today. The Sahara looks like a sandbox compared to this. You tug your shirt collar, already sweating. The air feels bone dry now, the heavy moisture of the coast's gone completely. You lick your lips and immediately regret it tastes like dust, as if the earth itself is seeping into your tongue. If you tried to camp here, you wouldn't last a night. You probably wouldn't survive this. And yet, here you are, trudging stubbornly forward, because curiosity beats common sense. Somewhere in the distance, you see jagged shapes breaking the horizon. Not trees, not mountains, but dunes towering ridges of sand, curling like frozen waves. They shift constantly, marching across the desert floor. Historians still argue whether these dunes stretched in continuous seas across whole regions or appeared in broken belts. But either way, the view before you is enough to make you want sunglasses. 100 million years ahead of schedule. You pause listening. Silence. No buzzing dragonflies. No croaking amphibians. Just the whistle of hot wind. And then you hear it. A soft scuttle. You turn your head just in time to spot a small reptile darting across the sand, leaving a trail of claw marks behind. It dives into a burrow with practiced speed. That's the trick here. Anything that survives does so by hiding. No lush canopy, no lakes to cool off in, just burrows, shade, and sheer luck. You crouch low and touch the sand. It burns against your fingertips. You jerk back, shaking your hand. The desert is alive with heat, even after the sun begins to tilt lower. Funny thought, people in your world pay money to visit saunas. But this entire interior of Pangea is one giant, natural sauna with no exit door. As you trudge forward, the wind changes. A fine dust storm rises, particles stinging your cheeks. You pull your shirt over your mouth, squinting through the blur. Visibility drops until you can barely see your own hands. This is no ordinary gust. Storms here could roll for days, powered by nothing but heat and emptiness. Some scholars suggest that such storms helped shape migration, forcing animals to move in search of food and safety. Others argue the storms made survival nearly impossible in these zones. Either way, you're coughing, stumbling, realizing just how small you are in Pangea's oven. Finally, the storm eases. The sky turns a bruised orange, and the horizon seems to shimmer. Heat mirages ripple, making the dunes dance. For a second, you almost think you see water. Your tired mind latches onto it, but you know it's a trick. Lakes were rare in Pangea's desert belts, and if one appeared, it was likely salty and shrinking fast. You sigh, laughing at yourself. Even here, millions of years in the past, your brain falls for the oldest desert prank. You sit down on a rock that jets from the sand, catching your breath. The stone feels cooler, shaded from the sun's worst angle. Looking closer, you notice strange patterns in the rock face, ancient ripple marks, frozen in time. Once, long before the desert claimed it, this spot was a shoreline kissed by waves. Earth is full of these little reminders that what looks permanent never is. Today's desert was yesterday's beach and tomorrow's mountain. Above you, the stars begin to prick the sky, pale at first, then sharper as darkness deepens. Without trees or clouds to block them, the constellations blaze bright. You lie back, the sand surprisingly comfortable, and stare up. For a moment, you forget the heat, the dryness, the sweat. It's just you and the stars, glittering like scattered gems across deep black velvet. And yet, as you drift, you hear it again, that faint scuttle. Something moves in the dunes, circling cautiously. Maybe another reptile. Maybe something bigger. Your pulse quickens, but then you chuckle softly. If it hasn't eaten you by now, maybe it won't. You roll onto your side, tucking your arms under your head. The desert hums in silence, vast and uncaring, but for tonight, it feels almost like a lullaby, dry, hot, endless, but strangely soothing. By morning, the red desert fades behind you, and the air shifts again. You notice the ground softening under your steps, the crackle of brittle sand replaced by something damp and springy. The horizon brightens with green so deep and lush it almost looks painted on. You wander forward, and soon you're stepping into a different world altogether, the swampy, fern-choked forests of Pangea. The air here is thick, humid, like walking into a sauna wrapped in a greenhouse. You breathe in and immediately catch the earthy tang of wet soil, mixed with the musk of decaying plants. A bead of water drips from a fern frond onto your arm, cool at first, but quickly warming against your skin. The transition is dramatic, almost comical. You go from desert oven to jungle steam bath in just a few strides. Welcome to the tropics of Pangea. Towering plants surround you. These aren't oaks or pines or anything resembling the cozy forest hikes you're used to. No, these are tree ferns, club mosses, and horsetails that rise like skyscrapers, some stretching 10 or 15 meters tall. Their stalks are ridged and strange, their fronds unfurling like massive green fans overhead. You feel small beneath them, as if you've wandered into a world built for giants. And in a way you have. You pause to touch the trunk of one fern. It feels spongy, fibrous, not woody like modern trees. This was Earth before flowering plants even evolved. No roses, no daisies, no apple orchards. Just ancient green powerhouses gulping down carbon dioxide and pumping oxygen into the atmosphere. Funny thought, if you're breathing easier now than in the desert, you can thank these leafy titans. A buzz tickles your ears. You swat at it, expecting a mosquito, but when you look up, your jaw drops. Hovering above you is an insect nearly the size of a raven, wings translucent, body segmented like armor. It darts off, weaving between fronds with astonishing agility. Scientists call its relatives Meganura, ancient dragonflies that grew absurdly large thanks to higher oxygen levels. Imagine pulling out a fly swatter for that beast. You'd need a tennis racket. Deeper into the swamp, the ground turns soft and muddy. You step carefully, boots sinking with a squelch. Every now and then, bubbles gurgle up through stagnant pools, releasing the sulfurous scent of decomposition. Not exactly the forest air freshener you were hoping for. Still, you find it oddly comforting. Life and death mingle openly here. The decaying plants, fueling new growth in a cycle that's been running for hundreds of millions of years. Somewhere nearby, a low croak echoes. You freeze, scanning the undergrowth. Then, with a splash, a creature the size of a Labrador slithers into the water. Its wide, flat head glistens, and you realize you're staring at an early amphibian, something like a Metaposaurus. Its eyes blink lazily, as though it barely registers you. And here's your quirky tidbit. Fossilized footprints show these creatures, sometimes traveled in herds, lounging together in muddy wallows like oversized newts at a pool party. Imagine stumbling across that. The forest is alive with sound now. Chirps, croaks, and the constant hum of insects. You push aside a fern, revealing a patch of mushrooms. Glowing faintly in the dim light, bioluminescence, it feels eerie, but mesmerizing, as though the forest floor has scattered lanterns just for you. Historians still argue whether such fungi glowed back then, or whether this is just a modern quirk. But in this half-lit swamp, the idea seems perfectly believable. As you walk, your hand brushes against a vine. You stop and chuckle. It's not a vine at all, but the segmented stem of a giant horsetail plant, jointed like bamboo. You snap off a piece and examine it. Hollow inside, sturdy outside, and used in some eras as natural sandpaper. Not that you're doing any DIY projects in Pangea. But hey, if you needed to smooth a wooden table, you'd be in luck. The air grows denser, and soon mist curls through the ferns. You hear the distant rumble of thunder, and drops begin to patter on the canopy overhead. The forest darkens, heavy rain pounding down, drenching everything in minutes. You duck under a massive frond, though it barely helps. Water trickles down your neck, soaking your shirt. The rain is warm, almost tropical shower-like, and the smell of wet vegetation intensifies until it feels like you're breathing green itself. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the symphony, the hiss of rain, the croak of amphibians, the buzz of insects. It's a lullaby, chaotic but soothing. And as you breathe deeply, you realize you're standing in one of Earth's first great greenhouses. No flowers, no fruit, no bird song, but still, a paradise in its own strange way. By the time the storm eases, the forest glistens. Droplets cling to every surface, sparkling in the faint light filtering through the mist. You push forward, heart thumping with anticipation. Somewhere deeper in these ferns and swamps, life is changing. Reptiles are emerging, testing their claws and teeth. You'll meet them soon enough. For now, you simply lean back against a fern stalk, letting it hold you and smile. Because tonight, you've walked straight into the lungs of Pangea. The storm fades into memory as you push deeper through the swampy forest. And soon, the air feels different, again still heavy with humidity, but sharper, tinged with the musk of living creatures. You pause, listening. Something moves through the undergrowth, soft claws scrabbling against damp earth. Then another sound, quick, skittering, like a tiny drum roll. You step carefully, parting fern fronds. And there it is, one of Pangea's earliest reptiles. It's no dinosaur, at least, not yet. This little lizard-like creature, maybe the length of your forearm, darts across the mud with surprising speed. Its body glistens under the filtered light, scales catching the damp. You hold your breath, watching it snap up an insect nearly half its size, swallowing greedily before scampering onto a rock to bask in the weak sun. You smile. Earth's great predators have to start somewhere. And here's where the legacy begins. You crouch low to observe. The reptile raises its head, blinking at you with curious golden eyes. For a moment, you almost feel like it recognizes you. But then it flicks its tongue, testing the air for scent, and darts back into the foliage. That quick vanishing act tells you everything. Survival in Pangea meant being cautious, swift, and ready to disappear at a moment's notice. You wander onward, and more of them emerge. Some climb tree trunks, claws gripping the fibrous bark. Others lounge in shallow pools, their snouts resting just above the waterline. They're experimenting. You realize, adapting to niches, testing strategies. This is the age when reptiles begin to outcompete amphibians, no longer tied to water for reproduction. The eggs they lay are tougher, protected by leathery shells, giving them freedom to roam farther and thrive in harsher environments. That evolutionary leap is why their descendants will one day dominate. And here's a quirky tidbit. Some paleontologists suggest that, early, reptiles were opportunists, eating just about anything: bugs, plants, even each other if times got rough. Picture a family dinner where everyone's nervously eyeing their cousin's leg like it's the entrée. You chuckle softly, half relieved you're not on their menu. At least, not yet. The forest grows louder as the day warms. Insects whine, frogs bellow, and overhead something crashes through the canopy. You jerk your head up, heart racing. But it's only a larger reptile leaping between ferns. Its long toes grip like hooks, tail swinging for balance. For a fleeting second, you see the spark of what's coming: a lineage that will give rise to creatures far larger, fiercer, stranger. Historians still argue whether these early climbers were direct ancestors of dinosaurs or simply side branches. But either way, they're rehearsing for the big show. You move slowly, careful not to disturb them, and instead take in the scenery. The mud is littered with tracks, tiny claw marks etched beside webbed amphibian prints. It's like reading a diary written in footprints. You crouch, tracing one groove with your finger, imagining the chase that might have played out here. Predator, prey? Maybe just neighbors awkwardly passing by. The forest doesn't tell you, only leaves clues. Further along, you stumble upon a clearing where the ground dips into a shallow pond. Sunlight filters in, glinting off ripples. A dozen reptiles bask on the banks, lined up like tiny statues. Their heads tilt, tongues flicking in unison, as if testing whether you're a threat. For a heartbeat, you feel the weight of their collective gaze. Then, just as suddenly, They scatter into water and bush, vanishing like smoke. You exhale, realizing you've been holding your breath. You're not used to being sized up by creatures that barely reach your ankle. But here, in Pangea, size doesn't guarantee survival. Agility, cunning, and luck matter more. And these reptiles are carving their place in that hierarchy. One snap of jaws at a time. As the afternoon wanes. You find a fallen log and sit, wiping sweat from your brow. The forest hums around you, alive with tiny dramas, hunts, escapes, hidden battles. You lean back and think about how fragile it all seems, and yet how enduring. The same survival tactics you're watching: speed, stealth, patience will echo through time, refined and magnified until they shape the reign of dinosaurs. The light softens, turning golden through the ferns. You stand, stretching, ready to keep moving. Somewhere ahead, the shadows conceal even larger creatures. Tonight, you've seen the rehearsal. Next, you'll hear the first whispers of giants. The forest deepens, and so does the silence. The chorus of insects fades for a moment, replaced by something heavier low, rumbles that seem to vibrate through the ground itself. You stop walking, ears straining. Then you hear it again, a guttural bellow, rolling across the swamp like distant thunder. You shiver. Whatever made that sound is not a dragonfly. You push carefully through a curtain of ferns and step into a clearing, where the ground slopes toward a marshy pool. At first, you think it's empty. Then, with a ripple, a shape emerges from the water. Broad, flat head, enormous jaw, eyes set high like periscopes. It's an amphibian, but not the kind you'd find hiding under a log in your backyard. This beast is Metaposaurus, stretching nearly 6 meters long, looking like someone supersized a salamander and left it in the sun too long. It heaves itself onto the bank, mud sucking at its belly. The creature opens its mouth in a slow, lazy yawn that reveals rows of small teeth. Then, just as quickly, it slumps back into the water with a splash, sending ripples across the surface. You swallow hard. One wrong step, and you'd be in there with it, testing whether human counts as a snack. Spoiler, you probably wouldn't survive this. You crouch low, heart racing, watching. The amphibian's eyes track movement in the water, something smaller, darting beneath the surface. With a sudden snap, its jaws close, and the water erupts in a spray of foam and scales. Dinner served. You exhale, realizing you'd been holding your breath again. It's unnerving, being so close to a creature that could swallow you whole without a second thought. But the marsh holds more secrets. On the opposite bank, something stirs among the reeds. A different shape, upright this time, balancing on sturdy legs. It steps forward, revealing a long tail, a narrow snout, and a body held higher than the belly, dragging amphibians. This is one of the protodinosaurs, perhaps Coelophysis. Small by future standards, but lightning fast. Barely 3 meters long, yet lean and muscled like a sprinter. Built for speed and precision. It moves cautiously, head tilting as it surveys the swamp. Then, with a sudden dart, it lunges into the reeds, jaws snapping. A squeal erupts, cut short as the hunter lifts a struggling reptile in its teeth. Blood darkens the water for a moment, then ripples erase the evidence. Dinner number 2, though this time with more style. You stand frozen, awed by the contrast. On one side, ancient amphibian giants, clumsy yet formidable, relics of an earlier world. On the other, nimble reptiles, ancestors of creatures destined to rule the planet. Historians still argue whether protodinosaurs like Coelophysis directly led to the dominance of their later cousins. or whether they were just experimental branches. But here, watching it stalk through the reeds, you feel like you're witnessing the first rehearsal of a performance that will soon headline Earth. A rustle behind you makes your stomach flip. You spin, half expecting something else ready to pounce. Instead, you spot another giant insect, a cricket-like creature, its body as long as your forearm, clinging to a fern trunk. It chirps once, loud enough to make you wince, then launches itself into the air with a clattering buzz. You let out a shaky laugh. Great, even the bugs here audition as jump scare specialists. The marsh grows louder again as twilight settles. Frogs croak, insects whine, and the deep bellows of the amphibians echo across the water. You sink onto a rock at the clearing's edge, still keeping a nervous eye on the rippling pool. Your reflection trembles in the water, broken by occasional splashes as predators hunt unseen beneath. And here's a quirky tidbit to lighten the mood. Paleontologists once discovered a fossilized Metaposaurus buried headfirst in mud, as if it had been trying to dig itself into a burrow. Imagine the frustration spending your last moments stuck like a shovel. You smirk at the thought, grateful at least for a sliver of humor in such a deadly place. Above, the sky deepens to indigo, stars piercing through the canopy. You listen to the overlapping calls, the mix of croaks and shrieks and growls. It's chaotic, unsettling, yet strangely soothing in rhythm. You lean back, gazing upward, and realize you're hearing the first great orchestra of giants creatures, still awkward in their roles, but destined to rewrite Earth's story. The night air cools slightly, though the swamp clings to its warmth. You wrap your arms around yourself, eyes heavy but senses sharp. Because in Pangea, even when the giants rest, the shadows never stop moving. The swamp fades behind you as dawn breaks, and soon you find yourself walking toward a shimmering horizon. At first, it looks like another mirage heat haze dancing across the land, but as you draw closer, the shimmer solidifies into water. Not the endless sweep of Panthalassa this time, but something calmer, smaller, yet still vast, an inland sea, tucked inside the body of Pangea like a blue gem set in stone. The air grows cooler here, breezes skimming across the surface and carrying the salty tang of evaporating water. You inhale, grateful for the relief after the heavy forest air. The shoreline crunches beneath your boots, littered with shells and fragments of strange creatures. Some are spiral ammonites, others belong to early bivalves, their patterns etched like fingerprints into the sand. You crouch to pick one up, running your thumb across its ridges. You realize that inland seas like this were scattered across Pangea, shaping migration routes, climate, and life itself. You wade closer to the edge. The water laps gently at your ankles, warm, almost too warm. You wiggle your toes in the sand and squint into the shallows. Tiny fish dart in flashes of silver, while stranger shapes armored, slow-moving crawl along the bottom. Horseshoe crab relatives, still doing their patient shuffle after hundreds of millions of years. Funny thought, they'll outlast the dinosaurs, the mammoths, maybe even us. Imagine them holding the ultimate, last one standing trophy. Out in deeper water, something larger stirs. A sleek shadow glides beneath the surface, breaking into sunlight with a flick of its fin. You freeze. For a second, your brain screams shark. And you wouldn't be wrong. Primitive sharks already stalked these seas, their teeth sharper than razors. This one circles lazily, then dips back into the gloom. You let out a nervous laugh. Great, even the lake's here. Come with built-in nightmares. You decide to get a better view and spot a log half submerged along the bank. Climbing onto it, you sit cross-legged, eyes scanning the water. From this perch, the sea spreads wide, glistening under the sun. Flocks of winged creatures swoop overhead, not birds yet, but early pterosaurs, skimming the waves and plucking fish with pinpoint accuracy. Their cries pierce the air, harsh and thrilling. You imagine what it would feel like to sail beneath them. Their wings, casting fleeting shadows across your boat. Historians still argue whether these inland seas connected fully to Panthalassa or remained isolated pockets. Some believe they acted like incubators, fostering unique species that never spread beyond their boundaries. Others suggest they were stepping stones, highways for life to travel across Pangea. Sitting here, you lean toward the second idea, because it feels like everything in this sea is part of a grand experiment, testing survival strategies for the ages. You glance back at the shoreline and notice tracks pressed into the wet sand. Reptile footprints, splayed and clawed, leading into the water. Perhaps hunting, perhaps fleeing. You follow them with your eyes until they vanish beneath the ripples. You imagine the moment something creeping to the edge, pausing, then plunging in with a splash. You chuckle, brave, or just desperate? Maybe both. A sudden splash interrupts your thoughts. A fish leaps into the air, scales flashing like coins, only to vanish into a waiting set of jaws. You flinch, heart thudding. But it's just another reptile sleeker than the ones you saw in the forest, built for water and land alike. Its teeth glint as it crunches down. Then it slithers back beneath the waves, gone as quickly as it came. You lean back on the log, letting the sounds of water soothe you. The inland sea is calmer than the swamp, yet its calm hides dangers beneath the surface. Sharks, armored fish, hungry reptiles, it's all part of the balance. A quirky tidbit floats into your mind. Some inland seas in later ages became the source of modern oil and gas, formed from layers of dead plankton and algae compacted over millions of years. You grin, imagining someone drilling here and finding nothing but confused dinosaurs. The sun shifts higher, glittering across the water. You trail your fingers in the shallows, feeling the tiny fish nibble curiously. For once, you don't pull back. It tickles, and you laugh softly, realizing that not everything here wants to eat you. Some creatures are just curious, cautious, as you are. You stand, brushing sand from your hands, and take one last look across the vast stretch of water. Somewhere out there, storms are already building, ready to sweep across Pangea's skies. But for now, you hold this moment still, reflective, suspended. An ancient sea lapping against your feet, carrying whispers of the deep. The sea's calm rhythm lulls you into a trance. But as you continue your walk inland, the air begins to shift. The breeze sharpens, no longer gentle but heavy, charged with something unsettling. The sky above, so clear moments ago, darkens as clouds pile in from the horizon, towering, black and fast-moving. You stop and squint upward. You've seen storms before, but nothing like this. The clouds stretch like mountains, churning with flashes of light inside their bellies. The air tastes metallic, prickling against your skin. A low rumble rolls across the land, deep enough to make your chest vibrate. You know instinctively you're about to witness one of Pangea's legendary tempests. Storms so massive they could swallow entire modern countries in a single sweep. You quicken your pace, looking for shelter. The land around you lies flat and exposed, dotted with scattered shrubs and patches of rock. No caves, no forests thick enough to hide in. Just endless plain, and the storm bearing down like an army. You mutter under your breath. Half a joke, half a plea. Sure. Let's test whether humans can survive a Triassic monsoon. Spoiler alert, I probably won't. Wind whips across the plain, tearing at your clothes, tugging at your balance. Dust stings your eyes, and you hunch low, squinting. The first drops of rain smack against your skin fat, warm and fast. More like someone tossing buckets of water than a drizzle. In seconds, you're soaked. Your hair plastered to your face. Then comes the downpour. Sheets of rain slam the earth, hammering so loudly it drowns out your own thoughts. Puddles expand instantly into streams, streams into rivers. You stumble forward, boots squelching in mud that wasn't there a minute ago. Lightning forks across the sky, jagged white veins splitting the darkness. Each strike makes you flinch, followed by thunder that feels like it could crack bone. You huddle against a boulder, pressing yourself into its shadow. From here, you can glimpse the sheer scale of it. Walls of rain marching across the land. Gusts of wind bending young trees to the ground. And then, with terrifying speed, the flash floods arrive. Water surges down from higher ground, sweeping across the plain, carrying branches, stones, and unlucky creatures caught in its path. You gape as a small reptile scrambles desperately onto a rock, tail lashing. For a moment, it clings there. Trembling, then the water rises higher and swallows it whole. Historians still argue whether storms like these shaped Pangea's deserts and forests, redistributing life and resources. Some suggest they were seasonal, tied to monsoon cycles. Others believe they were unpredictable monsters, triggered by temperature differences across the vast landmass. Watching this chaos, you lean toward monsters, because that's what it feels like, a living, breathing beast tearing at everything in its way. The wind screams louder, pushing you hard enough that you dig your fingers into the muddy earth for balance. Rain pelts so fiercely it almost burns. You can't help laughing, a shaky, breathless laugh, part disbelief, part hysteria. It's like standing under the world's largest showerhead, cranked up to max with no off switch in sight. But amid the terror, there's beauty too. Lightning illuminates the entire plain for a heartbeat, revealing shapes you'd never notice otherwise. Herds of reptiles, huddled together. Massive amphibians half buried in mud, all enduring the storm in their own way. You blink, and the vision vanishes back into darkness, leaving you with the sound of pounding rain. You pull your knees close, trying to stay warm. The storm shows no sign of stopping. Hours might pass this way, or maybe just minutes. Time dissolves in the roar. You think of home, of roofs and umbrellas and weather apps. Here, it's just raw survival against the elements. And oddly, the thought calms you. It reminds you that even in this alien world, nature plays by rhythms older than humans, older even than dinosaurs. A quirky tidbit floats into your mind. Fossilized ripples and mud cracks found in ancient rocks suggest that some storms in Pangea left scars lasting millions of years. Imagine a thunderstorm so intense its fingerprint outlives civilizations. You smile faintly. Maybe this storm will leave one too. And some future paleontologist will point and say, "Yep, that was a big one." Gradually, mercifully, the rain begins to ease. The thunder retreats into the distance, grumbling like a sore loser. The clouds thin, breaking apart to reveal slivers of blue. You emerge from behind the boulder, clothes heavy, skin chilled, hair dripping into your eyes. The plain glitters with temporary lakes, reflecting shards of sunlight like shattered mirrors. Steam rises where the sun touches wet ground, filling the air with a sweet, earthy scent. You straighten, muscles aching, but a strange exhilaration fills you. You've survived a Pangean storm, a force of nature that few could endure. The silence that follows feels sacred, fragile. You take a deep breath, tasting the clean air, savoring the calm after the fury. The silence after the storm lingers, heavy and strange. You walk slowly across the plain, boots squelching in the fresh mud, puddles reflecting the torn fragments of sky above. For a while, it feels almost peaceful, like the land is exhaling after holding its breath through the chaos. But beneath that calm, you sense something shifting, literally. The ground itself feels alive, restless oddity first, it's subtle. A faint tremor tickles your soles, like someone drumming fingers against the earth. You pause, frowning, wondering if you imagined it. Then the vibration deepens, humming up through your legs and into your chest. You crouch, pressing your palm flat against the mud. The earth shivers beneath your hand. A nervous laugh escapes you. Great, as if storms weren't enough. Now the planet itself wants to show off. The tremors build, turning puddles into tiny fountains of ripples. In the distance, you hear rocks cracking, shifting. A low rumble spreads across the land, not from the sky this time, but from below. Historians still argue whether Pangea's breakup began in this era or later. But there's no question tectonic forces were already at work pulling, stretching, straining against the seams of the supercontinent. Right now, you're standing on one of those seams. Lucky you. The ground bucks suddenly, a sharp jolt that knocks you to your knees. Dust bursts into the air, and birds or maybe pterosaurs erupt from their roosts, squawking in panic. You glance up just in time to see a cliffside crumble in the distance. Rocks tumbling like dice across the landscape. A cloud of grit rolls outward, making your eyes sting and your throat burn. Then comes the heat. A fissure cracks open 100 yards ahead, glowing red at the edges. Lava bubbles and spits, painting the ground in molten orange. You stumble back, the air scorching against your skin. It's mesmerizing, horrifying, yes, but mesmerizing. The liquid earth moves like honey, slow but unstoppable, carving new rivers across the plain. You mutter, half to yourself, well, there goes the neighborhood. The smell of sulfur stings your nose, acrid and sharp. Steam hisses where lava meets water, creating violent bursts of white clouds. You shield your face, squinting through the haze. Somewhere in the chaos, you hear the cries of animals deep, guttural bellows mixed with shrieks, creatures fleeing the eruption, just as desperate as you. A small reptile scrambles past your boots, tail whipping. You can't help but root for the little guy. Run. Buddy, run like your species depends on it. You stagger uphill, away from the crack, and glance back. The fissure snakes farther than you can see, glowing like a wound across the land. Historians suggest that eruptions like this released enough gas to alter global climates, even triggering extinctions. Some argue they opened the way for new ecosystems, reshaping life with fire and ash. You don't need convincing, you can see the reshaping in real time. A boulder tumbles from the ridge above, crashing into the mud beside you. The shockwave splatters you head to toe, but you're too busy laughing in disbelief to care. You've dodged storms, floods, predators, and now falling rocks. Honestly, if this keeps up, I deserve an achievement badge. The tremors ease for a moment, giving you a chance to catch your breath. You perch on a jagged stone, chest heaving, and watch the spectacle. Lava fountains spurt into the air, glowing arcs that fall back with hisses and splashes. The sky above is stained orange, smudged with ash that blots out the sun. For a moment, the world feels otherworldly, alien, even. Yet this chaos is what shaped the continents you know today. Europe, Africa, the Americas all were born from rifts like this. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your mind in some parts of the modern world. Geologists can still trace lava flows from Pangea's breakup, frozen into rock like fossilized fire. You wonder if the very stones beneath your feet will one day lie beneath a city, a farm, or maybe a desert highway. Strange thought that someone could build a calf right on top of this molten scar. The ground shifts again, but this time softer, almost like a sigh. The lava slows, cooling into black crusts that crackle and smoke. You stand cautiously, brushing ash from your arms. The danger isn't gone. You know eruptions often come in waves, but for now, the world seems to pause. Steam drifts lazily upward. Catching the fading sunlight, the smell of sulfur still lingers. But it's less harsh now, diluted by fresh rain carried on the wind. You look back one last time at the glowing fissure, still smoldering like a warning. The land has changed in minutes, reshaped before your eyes. What was once a plain is now a scarred, smoking wasteland. Yet even in its destruction, you sense creation, new land forming, new possibilities rising from the ashes. You take a deep breath, steadying yourself, and move forward, each step crunching against freshly cooled stone. Your steps crunch across the newly cooled crust, the air still tinged with the bitter smell of sulfur. The eruption's roar has faded into distant rumbles. But silence doesn't last long in Pangea. As you move further from the fissure, the ground flattens out, and you realize you've wandered straight into a patch of life teeming, noisy and a little dangerous. At first, it's the plants that catch your eye. Towering conifers stretch overhead, their dark needles hissing softly as the wind threads through them. Ferns cluster thick at the base, their fronds unfurling like lazy green spirals. The swampy soil squishes underfoot, and the air is thick with humidity. You swipe a hand across your forehead. Yep, nature's sauna. No towel service included. Then you hear the low grunt of something heavy shifting in the undergrowth. You freeze, pulse quickening. Branches snap. A shadow moves, large enough to make your stomach tighten. Out of the greenery lumbers a reptile the size of a compact car, its stocky body armored with bony plates along its back. It blinks at you with dull, ancient eyes before snorting and plodding toward the ferns, chomping lazily at the fronds. You exhale shakily. Okay, harmless herbivore. Don't mind me. Salad bars all yours. But not all the residents of this swamp are so peaceable. A sudden splash from a nearby pool makes you jump. Out slides a predator, slick-skinned and long-jawed, an amphibian easily 10 feet long. Its golden eyes fix on the armored reptile. You hold your breath, watching predator and prey lock in a tense stillness. Then, with surprising speed, the amphibian lunges. Water sprays, jaws snap, and the armored reptile bellows, thrashing. It shakes off the attack, retreating deeper into the ferns, leaving the predator glaring after it. Historians still argue whether ecosystems in Pangea were stable or constantly shifting under climate pressure. Watching this raw display, you suspect the answer is both balance and chaos, locked in a never-ending tug of war. You edge backward, careful not to draw attention. But the swamp won't let you slip away quietly. A flock of flying reptiles bursts from the treetops, screeching as they spiral overhead. Their wings stretch wide, leathery and translucent, catching the light. One swoops low, almost brushing your hair with its tail. You duck instinctively, muttering, dive bombed by a prehistoric kite. Just perfect. The cacophony grows. Small reptiles scuttle over roots. Insects the size of sparrows buzz your ears, and somewhere in the distance, a deeper roar shakes. The air, something far larger, announcing its claim to this patch of forest. You realize you're standing in the middle of a living argument over territory, food, and survival. Every creature here fights daily just to keep going. You kneel for a moment, studying the ground. Tracks overlap everywhere, clawed footprints, wide belly drags, delicate bird-like prints no bigger than your palm. It's a layered history written in mud. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Paleontologists sometimes find entire trackways fossilized. Snapshots of predator chases or herd migrations preserved for millions of years. Maybe the prints you see now will one day tell the story of this exact swamp, of the battles and bargains happening around you. The longer you watch, the more you notice smaller dramas unfolding. A tiny lizard darts after an insect, only to be snatched mid-leap by a bird-like reptile. The bird-like reptile, triumphant, flaps off until it, too, is caught in the jaws of something larger waiting in the reeds. It's a relentless cascade, predator upon predator, each link in the chain precarious. You whisper to yourself, eat or be eaten, the original Pangea rulebook. But amidst the tension, there's rhythm too. The herbivores graze undisturbed, the swamp buzzes with life, and the predator who failed its ambush slinks back into the water, biding its time. Balance, however fragile, restores itself. You can almost feel the heartbeat of the ecosystem, pulsing through the ground and air. A sudden tremor, not from tectonics this time, but from movement, shakes the soil. You glance sideways and see a massive shape, passing between the trees, a proto-dinosaur. Tall and lean, its long neck weaving above the canopy as it forages. Its presence is commanding, and for a moment, everything else seems to fall quiet. Even predators stay low, unwilling to draw its attention. You step back, craning your neck to follow its path, marveling at the sheer scale of it. Creatures like this will one day dominate the earth. But here in Pangea, there's still just one piece of the puzzle. Watching it stride away, you realize you're seeing not just survival, but evolution in motion, ecosystems clashing, colliding, and carving out the future. You take a deep breath of the swampy air, savoring the mix of rot, water, and life. It's overwhelming, chaotic, even a little terrifying, but it's also beautiful. The story of existence, unfolding step by messy step, long before humans ever showed up to complicate it further. The swamp eventually thins, the ground firming beneath your steps as you follow a trail out toward drier land. The air is quieter here, less choked with buzzing insects and animal cries. But it isn't peaceful, it feels uneasy, unsettled, as if the whole landscape is holding its breath. You pause, listening. There's no bird-like chatter, no heavy footsteps, no splashing from amphibians. Just silence. And in that silence, you feel it again, that whisper of change. Not the sharp crack of an earthquake or the sudden chaos of a storm, but something slower, subtler. You notice the plants first. Their leaves look smaller, paler. Some ferns curl inward, tips browned as if scorched, though no fire touched them. Streams you pass run lower than they should, banks dry and cracked. Even the air feels thinner, harder to pull into your lungs. Historians still argue whether these shifts were sudden, catastrophes, or gradual declines, stretched across thousands of years. But here, as you trudge across this weary land, you can imagine both. Days that seem normal, but with small warnings that add up until one morning the forest never wakes again. A rustling ahead makes you quicken your pace. You emerge onto a clearing where a group of herbivores lingers. Their massive bodies seem sluggish, ribs showing faintly beneath their scales. One lowers its head to a patch of ferns, gnawing listlessly before giving up, jaw hanging open in exhaustion. Another coughs a deep, rattling sound that makes you wince. They're alive, but barely. You sit on a rock, watching them, a lump forming in your throat. These creatures, once rulers of their swamps and forests, look like shadows of themselves. You remember the armored reptile that shrugged off an amphibian's attack, the proto-dinosaur striding tall above the canopy. This scene feels different, like the beginning of an ending. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind. Scientists once thought mass extinctions were rare accidents, sudden cosmic strikes like asteroid impacts. Now, many argue that Earth itself, its climate, its atmosphere, its shifting continents often plays the executioner. Standing here, you don't need theories. You can feel the Earth turning its back on its own inhabitants further down the clearing. A predator emerges, ribs jutting beneath its skin. Its eyes are sharp, desperate, but it doesn't lunge. Instead, it paces, watching the herbivores with something like hesitation, as if even the effort of a hunt isn't worth the risk anymore. Hunger hangs in the air, heavy as fog. You shiver, realizing you're part of the menu too. You whisper under your breath, half joking, half nervous, maybe I should have brought a pact. Lunch save everyone the trouble. The predator eventually slinks away, and the herbivores shuffle onward, leaving you alone in the fading light. You lean back, staring at the horizon. The sun bleeds orange and red, filtering through a haze that looks thicker than normal. Ash, dust, or just your imagination? You don't know, but it adds to the unease building in your chest. Historians debate whether volcanic outgassing poisoned the air, whether rising carbon dioxide spiked temperatures, whether oceans turned anoxic and suffocated life. The truth is probably a blend of all these, working together like a conspiracy. What you know for sure is that something is unraveling. The ecosystems you've marveled at, the buzzing swamps, the sprawling deserts. The predator chases are under siege, not from one event, but from a whole series of whispers adding up to a scream. Night falls, and the silence deepens. Normally, nights here crackle with activity, but now you hear only the occasional chirp, lonely and uncertain. The stars above glitter coldly, oblivious to the struggle below. You lie back in the grass, heart heavy, and imagine what will come after this silence. Because history tells you the silence won't last. Life collapses, yes, but it also rebounds. New species rise, new forests grow, new predators stalk new prey. That's the cycle. You've seen it before in smaller clashes, and you'll see it again. But in this moment, with the swamp behind you wilting and the clearing around you hollow, it's hard not to feel the weight of loss. You close your eyes briefly, breathing the thinner air, and mutter softly, extinction has a sound. And it sounds like this. The silence lingers as you rise and continue walking. But beneath your feet, something new is stirring. The ground isn't steady anymore. Subtle tremors ripple through the soil, like a sleeping giant shifting restlessly under a blanket of rock. You pause, crouching low, pressing your palm against the earth. It feels alive, but not in the nurturing, swampy way you felt before. It feels restless, pulling itself apart. Up ahead, the land splits open in a jagged crack no wider than a doorway, stretching endlessly to either side. You approach cautiously, peering into its depths. Steam hisses upward, carrying the sulphurous tang of volcanic breath. This is no ordinary fissure. It's the seam of a continent tearing itself open. You're watching Pangea's great unraveling. Historians still argue whether the breakup began suddenly with violent rifts or slowly, over millions of years. Either way, you're here at the very start, and it's breathtaking. Imagine a single massive puzzle board slowly breaking into the continents. You know today Africa pulling east, North America drifting west, South America tugging southward. Standing at this crack, you're literally between futures. The pieces just starting to slide apart. You shuffle sideways along the edge, peering down. Lava glows faintly in the darkness, not yet an eruption, but a promise. Heat licks your face, and you mutter, "Yep." This is the Earth's way of saying personal space matters. Further along, you reach an inland sea stretched across the split. Water gurgles down into the crack, vanishing into steam with a roar. New coastlines are being born before your eyes. The thought hits you, these broken shores will one day cradle oceans, spawning entire ecosystems, shaping weather, even guiding the course of civilizations not yet imagined. Right now, it's just chaos, thunderous steam plumes, shuddering ground, and water boiling away into the air. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Geologists sometimes find basalt, floods, thousands of feet thick evidence of ancient volcanic rifts. These colossal lava sheets may have gushed from cracks like this, pouring for centuries at a time. Imagine entire landscapes swallowed whole in a river of fire, layer upon layer until only molten plains remained. You glance down again at the faint orange, glow, and decide you've seen enough to get the picture. But the tearing isn't only physical, it's biological too. You spot herds of animals clustered along the seam, confused. Some pace nervously, unwilling to cross the smoking cracks. Others attempt it and stumble, vanishing into the rift. Survival here isn't just about predator and prey. Anymore, it's about adapting to a world literally falling apart under their feet. The air thickens with a strange new humidity. Storms gather faster, lightning flashing across the horizon. Drawn to the energy of the rift, rain lashes down, hot and sharp, drenching you in minutes. You press forward through the deluge, watching rivers form instantly, carving new channels into the torn earth. The breakup is chaotic, violent, but also creative, reshaping the map in real time. Historians still argue how long this process took, whether continents drifted apart inch by inch like snails on a dinner plate, or whether bursts of furious splitting sped it along. Watching this storm rage over the rift, you lean toward the latter. It feels like the earth is impatient, cracking itself open with urgency. You stop beneath a half-toppled tree, catching your breath. Over the roar of rain, thunder, and hissing steam, you think about what this means. Pangea's end isn't just geology, it's the foundation for everything that comes after. New oceans will divide life, isolating species, forcing evolution down new paths. New climates will bloom tropics, deserts, frozen poles driving change across the globe. You're not just watching a breakup. You're watching the blueprint of the modern world being scribbled into existence. You close your eyes, listening to the earth split, and whisper. So this is how continents are born: messy divorces with lava custody battles. Lightning cracks overhead, illuminating the chasm one last time. You step back from the edge, soaked and shivering, but strangely exhilarated. The supercontinent you've wandered for so long is breaking apart, and though it feels like loss, it's also the beginning of something vast and new. The storm softens as you move away from the rift, rain tapering into mist that clings to your clothes and hair. The ground beneath you still shudders now and then, but the violence fades, replaced by a low, steady hum, as if the earth is catching its breath after the exertion of tearing itself apart. You walk on, the landscape quieter, calmer, though forever changed. Soon the mist clears, and you find yourself on a high ridge. From here, the view stretches far into the distance, vast plains cut by cracks, steaming rivers feeding into widening seas, forests clinging stubbornly to slopes even as the land shifts beneath them. You realize that one day, far beyond your lifetime, these fragments will drift into the familiar shapes. You know, Africa curving into South America like puzzle pieces, India racing north to collide with Asia, giving birth to the Himalayas. Historians still argue exactly how much of today's geography can be traced directly back to Pangea's final movements. But standing here, it's hard not to see the outlines already taking form. The world you live in now is quite literally born of this broken unity. You sit on the ridge, legs dangling over the edge, and let your mind wander into the present. Suddenly, things you've always taken for granted begin to glow with new meaning. The Appalachian Mountains, for example, those ancient ridges weren't carved in some isolated drama, but as part of Pangea's rise and fall. They're scars of the supercontinent's tectonic collisions, or the strange fossils of the same species found on opposite sides of the Atlantic, proof that once those lands were one. A quirky tidbit pops into your head. When early scientists first noticed these matching fossils across oceans, critics mocked the idea of drifting continents. What? The continents go for a midnight stroll, they sneered. Now, as you stare across the steaming rift, you almost laugh. Midnight strolls indeed, only they take millions of years, and the footprints are made of entire coastlines. You lean back, watching clouds break to reveal a brilliant sky streaked with the last traces of storm. For a moment, you can almost see the ghosts of modern maps hovering over Pangea's fractured surface, like translucent overlays. South America tugging away, North America spinning, Africa staying central, while Antarctica slides southward to become a frozen exile. The echoes are faint now, but they're there. Historians still argue how much Pangea influenced today's climates, but you can feel its fingerprints everywhere. The deserts that once sprawled across its center left behind, rock formations that still define regions, the monsoon systems that battered its edges, helped establish long-term weather cycles. Even today, ocean currents and wind patterns carry hints of the supercontinent's sway, like ripples that never fully faded. As you wander down from the ridge, you notice small creatures scurrying into new niches. Some burrow into fresh cracks. Others leap across shallow streams forming where land has sunk. Evolution is already rehearsing its next act, pushing life into experiments. Isolation will drive some species to shrink, others to grow, and countless more to vanish. You realize you're watching the rehearsal for modern biodiversity, the branching paths that lead, ultimately to you. You crouch by a pool left by the rain, tracing a finger through the surface. The reflection wavers, broken by ripples, until it looks less like you and more like a shifting map. You smile softly and murmur. So every shoreline, every mountain, every migration. We know today all of it is just Pangea's breakup echoing forward. The wind picks up again, warm this time, carrying the scent of damp earth and steam. You inhale deeply, letting it ground you. You think of the places you know, cities, forests, oceans. You imagine telling someone at home that the ground beneath their feet used to be stitched together with land thousands of miles away. And you imagine their raised eyebrows, their skeptical chuckle. and their quiet ah once the idea sinks in. You stand and continue walking, the ridge fading behind you, the broken landscape stretching ahead. You know now that Pangea never truly vanished. It lingers in the stones, in the fossils, in the coastlines, and in the weather patterns that still shape your world. The supercontinent may have cracked apart, but its fingerprints are everywhere on maps, on ecosystems, even in human history. You pause one last time, gazing back at the fissures and steaming rivers, and whisper, echoes don't fade. They just change shape. The land softens under your feet as you keep moving, the rumbling cracks of Pangea fading into memory. The sky overhead turns calmer, painted with long streaks of orange and purple, as if the earth itself wants to give you a gentle send-off after the chaos. The air feels lighter now, easier to breathe, though it still carries the heat of ancient storms. You wander through grasslands that weren't here before, green shoots pushing up stubbornly from soil split by tectonic strain. They wave in the warm wind like an early promise new. Life insisting that endings are only beginnings in disguise. You crouch down and brush, your hand across the blades, marveling at how quickly nature claims its place. No matter how violent the upheaval, historians still argue whether early plants spread more by wind or water. But here, with seeds swirling around you like tiny messengers, you'd bet on both. They catch in your hair, your sleeves, drifting onward to colonize whatever patch of ground will have them. This is the quiet resilience of the planet life scattering, adapting, whispering, try again. In the distance, herds move slowly across the plains, familiar yet not ancestors of creatures that will one day roam the continents separately. You spot a stocky reptile digging near a burrow, its scales gleaming in the twilight. It looks up, tilts its head, then returns to its work as if to say, "You've seen the storms, the rifts, the lava, but in the end, it's just about surviving the next sunrise." You smile, a little weary, and keep walking. Every step feels heavier now, not from fatigue, but from the weight of what you've witnessed. The birth, life, and fracturing of a supercontinent isn't something you just shrug off. It clings to you like the mist, like the hum of tectonic plates still working in the depths below. Then, as the landscape stretches into shadow, you sense the final shift. The vision of Pangea, with its deserts, forests, swamps, storms, and cracking seams, begins to dissolve around you. Modern coastlines ripple into focus the continents as you know them today. North and South America, reaching across an ocean toward Europe and Africa. Australia drifting below, Antarctica crowned in ice. Echoes of what you've seen, reshaped into a map you could trace in your sleep. You realize now that the world you live in isn't just a product of time. It's the child of Pangea's breaking heart. Every migration of animals, every rise of civilizations, every gust of wind off the ocean owes something to that colossal supercontinent and its slow motion. Shattering, you take one last deep breath of Triassic air and let it out, your chest loosening. You've walked the endless deserts, wandered the fern forests, felt storms batter your skin, stood over rifts glowing with fire. And now you're returning with the story stitched inside you, and so, with your steps growing slower, your eyelids heavier, you let Pangea fade away. Carrying its echoes gently into the quiet of your own time, the world softens now, like a blanket being drawn over a restless child. The storms have passed, the earth has quieted, and you are no longer walking across a supercontinent. You are lying still, breathing slow, safe in your own bed. The hum of ancient tectonic plates is far behind you, replaced by the steady rhythm of your heartbeat and the whisper of your breath as you drift. Imagine the land beneath you stretching vast and unbroken, then slowly giving way, gently shaping itself into the continents you know. See the mountains rise like long sighs, oceans widen like unfolding wings, and forests spread like green lullabies. The story of Pangea isn't just about fire and breaking, it's about patience, about endurance, about the beauty of slow change. Your body sinks deeper now, heavy as stone yet light as drifting ash. You're both the wanderer who crossed deserts and forests and the dreamer who needs only to rest. Every sound around you, whether the soft hum of a fan, the quiet tick of a clock, or the silence itself, feels like the earth's breath cradling you into sleep. The images grow fainter, herds fading into mist, fissures sealing themselves in memory, seas calming to glass. All that remains is the comfort of knowing that the planet endures, reshaping itself endlessly, and you are part of that story, safe within it. So let go, close your eyes. Drift with the continents, with the oceans, with the slow turning of the earth itself. And as sleep finally takes you, may it carry you gently across time, into peace, into dreams.